Welcome everyone. This is our August Public Health and Safety meeting, and we have a pretty full agenda. We had canceled our July meeting, and a lot has happened. So our police chief has moved on to another position, and we thank him for the work he's done. But we're also happy to have representatives of the department here at the meeting today. So why don't we just begin? We'll follow our agenda here. We need to approve the minutes from June, our last meeting. So any objections to that? Okay, so we'll go ahead and approve the minutes for June. And we'll move right into public comment. I don't think there is any public comment. So traffic concerns. We had updated our review policy. So we kind of raised the bar a little bit. Before we were getting one person's complaint, and that was triggering a whole review. And now we've kind of raised it to what, 3? Okay.
Three households. 3
households, okay. So Manager Bryant, is there anything you want to share about Essex or Windsor?
Sure. So Essex, as this committee decided last month, Public Works deployed the traffic and speed monitoring units on both Essex Ave and Dudley Ave as you come up towards that sort of weird intersection before you get over to Montgomery. And both units, well, the resident noticed, who made the original complaint, and expressed gratitude for us putting those up. And then looking at the actual data that was collected, there wasn't really a lot of speeding going on. There was like one person the day the units were installed who went 65 in the middle of the night. But I almost wonder if they were messing with the thing because it tells you what your speed is as you go through it. But after the first day they were installed, there was almost 0 speeding on both of those roads. So it leads to one of 2 conclusions. As a semi-amateur here, I know we have a couple of folks from the police department. My one thought is that either there wasn't a speeding problem and the units documented that, or there was a speeding problem and the units have helped, deter people from speeding. I think in the future, when we deploy the units, we're gonna have a period where they're there, but you can set them to whether it shows the speed or not. So I think we might do it when we first deploy them where it won't show your speed. And then after maybe 2 weeks or something like that, change it to showing what your speed is so they look like they're on, and see what we get. But to make a long story short, given that we don't have any other outstanding concerns right now that would require use of the units, and putting them there seems to satisfy the residents' concern, I would recommend we just leave them there until we get any new concern that would require us to move them.
Yeah, same. No,
Sorry.
Oh, sure.
So if the committee's fine with that, and if the police are fine with that, I think we'll just leave the units there until we get a new concern that would require using them. And when we use them in the future, we'll start by not having the speed display on, and then later on we'll turn the speed display on.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Andrea.
So in the event that the speed complaint is on a commercial block, is it going to be 3 businesses have to complain, or how do we do that with a commercial block?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's how I would envision 3 property owners. I guess might be the better way of putting it.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you for that. We keep refining the process and it gets better.
And then with Windsor and Iona, so as we kind of talked about here last time, I was really grateful to Cindy, who sent me the report done in 2003 about that area of the borough and some other adjoining streets. And it was both encouraging and maybe a little bit depressing that so much of what was in that report is still relevant to that area today. So I reviewed that report. I sent some thoughts on it that I included in the packet. to Cindy and to our engineering team. And I think, again, as we talk about doing like a borough-wide traffic audit and trying to get grant funding or just otherwise borough funding for it, I think that report and its recommendations need to be, part of that study and consideration, because I think there were some good recommendations in there for addressing traffic. In terms of the immediate concern about installing more signage or anything like that, I think we all had agreed between this committee and Public Works and the borough's traffic engineer that there's already adequate signage at the intersection, and there might be actually too much signage at the intersection of Windsor and Iona. So I think, it's not a quick fix, but I think the actual solution to any traffic problems in that area is the proposed traffic audit process and the recommendations from that 2003 report that Cindy provided.
I think what underscores, and again, this is just, we've been kind of doing this for at least my time in the borough, is that even while people don't speed, they're doing 25, 26, 28, it feels too fast. So the data that we give to homeowners, while, we want to use evidence and data, it still is just too fast, and I know we have no legal authority to change the speed limit, of course. But this is where, again, I think we can look at utilizing the built environment to slow things down. And I think the thing that demonstrated that, or at least the most effectively for me, was when we did that pop-up bike lane. While I personally would support putting bike lane here and negating the traffic, it did show when that road was narrow, at least anecdotally, I did feel like it slowed time down in a way that we've never been able to do.
Yeah.
And that's what that report says.
Yeah, I totally agree with all of that. Yeah.
Okay, so just remind me, the audit is kind of on deck?
Sorry, what's that?
The traffic audit, what's the timing?
Oh yeah, so we have two strategies for that well, I guess we have three strategies for that at this point. Number one is we've applied for that multimodal grant, which would cover looking at traffic patterns and multimodal improvements along Haverford Avenue. Myself and actually some folks from the EAC, to their credit, and our traffic team are working on a grant application that would require no match from the borough from the new federal infrastructure money that would pay for a traffic safety study of the rest of the borough, and that'll be due in late September. So council in either August or September would need to weigh in on that. And then number three is that by the end of this year, if we don't have either of those grants, I think we're just gonna have to budget some money to get it done, because it just impacts so many other things we're trying to do in the borough, and it touches on just so many other things in our comprehensive plan that we're trying to accomplish.
What's the title of the traffic study grant?
It's Safe Streets for All.
Thanks.
Okay, so it sounds like one way or another, by 2024, we'll kind of be
Yeah.
moving ahead with. Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, great. So next we get to the action items. So we wanted to talk about the emergency management coordinator. This was a role that John Gallagher had taken on, and so now we need to sort out who could do that. Certainly whether in the interim or long term, as we search for the next chief. So, is that right?
That is correct, and I pulled the state code on it, and actually from Butler Township, they had a really good short version of what the state code means that I copied and pasted in the packet. Basically, the short version is we're legally required to have an emergency management coordinator. My understanding of that person's duties is that there is a emergency, a natural emergency or whatever. This person will be working with the mayor, to be our point person to deal with said emergency. The requirement really, I mean, it doesn't have to be a borough resident. It can be anyone. We just have to have one, and that person has to has to then get or already have the required state certifications, and also has to be approved. Well, sorry, wrong order. They have to then be approved by the governor, and then they have to have or get the required state certifications. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. We had Chief Gallagher do it. In my last job, the third-party building inspector actually on the side was the EMC. Lots of places have residents who volunteer to do it. Another option state law allows for that I pointed out is we can make outreach to another municipality and see if their EMC would be willing to be a joint EMC. There's a lot of different ways we can do it. It's just whatever direction you all want to go, we can do that.
Okay, so why don't we start? Are there any thoughts here, and then there might be suggestions?
Can we add this to one of the housing job and responsibilities?
I could ask. I don't know. I mean, I welcome Bill's thoughts on that, I guess. Not to start to put you on the spot, Bill. Sorry to put you on the spot, Bill. Cindy asked would it be reasonable to assign the job of EMC to either Ken Watson or John Flynn.
Okay, I guess you could. They need to get their required training. It's 3 levels of training: basic, professional, basic, advanced, and professional. Each level of that level of training is multiple state classes that you have to take to attain that level. I think you have a year to get to the basic level, which is what the requirement is for emergency management.
And now also not to put you on the spot here as well, but are you the EMC for Open Marion?
What?
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess my second question is, why don't we just ask Laura Marion and have an MOU with them with the police? I'm assuming if there's a natural disaster that really triggers
Yeah.
the EMC, Ellen is going to have to be involved. Wouldn't it be easier to have that be cohesive?
Yeah, I'll admit probably my gut instinct was to first ask Lower Marion Township's EMC if that person would be willing to do it, and then come back to the committee. And then if not, I think then at that point we could certainly talk about, maybe I could also in the interim talk to Ken and John about it if that doesn't work out. And I think that would be our strategy.
With professional development for two of our house people, I would like to offer, I think, anybody in staff, like the ability to increase their professional network, but in the interim, it feels like Ellen's.
So, I assume it would be part of the next chief's role.
I mean, it could, it doesn't have to.
I mean, so, I don't know. I think it could be done on a temporary basis.
Well, why don't I do this? I'll start by reaching out to Lower Marion and see what their EMC's appetite is for that role here.
Okay.
And again, see if they would be temporary versus permanent and all that sort of thing. And then I can report back next month.
The Lower Marion EMC is Superintendent McGrath.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, my humble opinion, I don't know that we want to go that route, but that's your decision.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Bill on that.
I know this is a recorded meeting, and Josh would be saying it. I don't want to.
I think it makes sense to build it into the chief's job description.
I don't want to throw myself on the sword, but I am trained at a professional level. I can't do your search, as you search for somebody. If you need somebody in this room, I would be willing to discuss that. And I'm not, again, I'm not advocating I get the position, I really don't want it, but.
But on an interim basis.
On an interim basis, I'd be willing to help out.
Well, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. That could be a good solution.
All right, well, why don't we do this then? Maybe on an interim basis, we will appoint Bill we'll recommend council appoint Bill until the chief search and all that sort of thing is sorted out. And then from there, we can decide whether we want the chief to hold that position or a houseman or someone else on a permanent basis.
Okay. That sounds good. Thank you, Bill. Okay, so then, next we go to, pest and trash control. Let's see. This is an issue that our committee has taken up over the years. You know, for the record, we have not received any complaints this calendar year. But we do want to kind of get the word out on how to manage rodents. You know, and also, I mean, there was this article about a specific property on the south side that's, I guess, slated for demolition. So we want to just kind of review what's going on with that. So.
Yeah, so I guess I'll speak first to the specific property, 190 Elmwood, and then I can speak more broadly about the borough. So at 190 Elmwood, there was, anytime that there's been a report of rodents or pests, our code enforcement officer has, taken a look at the property. Most recently, as part of the, demo permit, the code enforcement officer and the borough engineer did a walkthrough of the interior and exterior of the property. A rodent was observed during that walkthrough. So the property owner was required to bring in an exterminator prior to any demolition work. Well, let me backtrack that. We didn't require the property owner to bring in an exterminator. We just required the property owner to, solve the issue. The property owner decided that bringing in an exterminator was the way that they wanted to solve the issue. I don't know how council feels about this. I have some kind of personal feelings about whether, the sort of things that exterminators do is really the right way to go from an environmental standpoint. But an exterminator was brought in. The exterminator did what exterminators do. I can give you the details if you want. But otherwise, I'll just say that I, based on the information I received from the code officer yesterday about the work that the exterminator did, the property is ready for demolition now without fear of it then causing an encroaching rodent issue.
Okay.
Longer, bigger picture in the borough, over my time here, I've done a fair bit of research now about rodents and what municipalities have done to treat rodent issues. And, securing trash and securing food sources is the single most important thing that people can do. There also was a great article from the New York Times that Cindy sent around to this committee that pointed out that during the pandemic, mice were used to feeding on food waste in restaurants. And so many restaurants and businesses were closed during the pandemic that, rodents had to adapt, and with people being at home more, they go where the food is, so then they started showing up more around residential properties. And this article explained that despite that businesses are open again, mice have now realized, because they're actually, they're not geniuses, but they're relatively intelligent mammals, that they can get food both at residential properties and commercial properties now. So, I think that's why we're seeing an uptick in these concerns. And again, we've tried an education campaign for businesses and residents about securing trash. We've tried to do, it's been difficult and it's been time consuming and there's more work to be done, don't get me wrong, enforcement of trash related issues. I'm hopeful that the commercial fire inspection program that Kevin's going to get, our code officer, it's going to be starting in the fall, will help a little bit with some of these issues as well. We tried something this committee previously discussed. We piloted putting the special lid on a trash can to discourage apartment dwellers from putting all their trash in the open trash cans. And unfortunately, that did not solve the problem. The trash can was still filled up, and then people were also putting trash beside the trash can since they couldn't fit it through the lid in the trash can.
So, on that point, do these landlords have their own private trash haulers, or why would a resident put their trash?
Right, so that's the challenge, and again, I think something the rental inspection program, once we get that up and running, will help us figure out and address.
Okay.
One thing I will say though in defense of landlords is the way the borough has our trash collection system set up is that everyone in the borough pays for it because it's part of the property tax bill. So I guess on the one hand, I would say that given that those property owners are technically paying for trash service, that the borough should probably think about how do we, I don't know if we should necessarily expect them to provide that service when they're technically paying the borough for it.
Right.
So I don't,
I just think whenever we talk about trash, we have to also say compost at the same time, because, in the last 20 to 30 years, there's been a huge number of people gardening, vegetable gardening and all that stuff's become really popular. Anybody who throws their food scraps in the compost are inviting rodents to their yard, and there's a lot of that going on that wasn't happening 5-10 years ago, all over town. So I think let's always say like trash and compost, and residents shouldn't put food scraps in their compost.
Right.
And composting leaves and like yard debris is one thing, but putting food scraps is really inviting rodents.
Yeah. No, that's a good reminder, and this is why some municipalities have municipal compost collection. Yeah. Okay, I think Andrea.
It's a kind of thing where you got to take a multi-pronged approach, and there's not one particular situation, one fix it's going to fix it all. But another issue is people who put out bird feeders. Bird feeders are a source of food for rodents. So I know people love to look at the pretty birds and all, but when the food drops all over the ground, it is another source of food for rodents. So I would encourage, not doing that.
and then the last, sorry.
I guess just thank you for underscoring that there had not been a single complaint this calendar year about rats, and I think that's something FNA should address. Before calling the inquirer, please call us, because we want to be good neighbors. But the second point is, we've been talking about business abuse of trash and recyclables since I've been on council. I remember Judy actually wanted the police to go look through the trash, and we all came that idea. But it is really difficult because, there is a business on Narberth Avenue with very distinct food product that overwhelmed a public receptacle. And I went in to say, hey, why do your trash is completely clogged? And they said, it's not mine. And I had to say, all of the Chinese scripted trash in the trash can, you're saying it was not yours. It's somebody else's restaurant. And they said, no, it's not ours. And it had been overwhelming and receptacle all down the street. So, I don't know if that happens with the building code that we could tack on, or how you would hold businesses accountable for not using the public receptacle. It's been an issue and a problem. Again, Gigi tried to tackle it because she saw such an issue 6 years ago, and we've never been able to come up with a solution.
Yeah, and I will say in terms of businesses, the borough does provide trash service for business. We provide the dumpsters around town and all that. And we try to educate businesses if those are available to them. Again, I think it's just, just enforcement from the code enforcement officer, and it's a whack-a-mole kind of thing, and it's just tough to find the time for it, but I think that unfortunately is the only solution to it.
By the way, I thought that informational notice that you put in the borough newsletter about rodents was good, because residents have to take responsibility for exterminating on their own properties if they have a problem. It's not, everybody's just going to have to do that themselves.
The last thing I wanted to point out on this topic was, Bob's mention of composting. The borough's climate action plan also talks about efforts the borough can make to just reduce waste overall in the borough. And municipal composting was one of the proposals. Another thing I think could help is, I haven't had a chance to really, this will be, I guess, the first time publicly I'll mention this, is, our contract with Republic is up at the end of next year. And so I've started talking a little with Republic about, if they were to get the bid again, how could they improve service? How could we work together to reduce waste in the borough? The other thing we've been looking into is our public works directors and making outreach, to Lower Marion about whether that's a viable option. We've been looking at house about whether it's viable for the borough to provide trash service. And something Lower Marion does that I thought was pretty neat is they have a variety of fee levels, but it all really boils down to two main sort of trash service levels. And to encourage people to generate less trash, if you generate less trash, you actually get a smaller container and you pay less for your trash service. I don't know how complicated the billing gets with that, but again, right now everyone in the borough pays 2 mills, no matter how much trash you produce or don't produce, towards trash service. And maybe moving, whether we stick with Republic or or a contractor or going a different direction, it might be worth examining how we're charging people for that service and if we can incentivize people to produce less trash.
Yeah,
It's really complicated.
Yeah.
They do.
That fully is.
Some residents, they get to pick up from the back of their yard. The guys go and find their.
Yeah, they do have to
Some
pay more
residents
for
have to
that.
bring their cans out to the street, and some have small cans, some have large. It's really they must have a huge staff that can.
So maybe one of those ideas that 6 months I come back to you all kind of my hands in the air and I don't think we can do it. But,
yeah.
but those ideas are out there.
Well, just one other idea we had discussed years ago as part of the next trash contract, possibly the option of buying trash. Residents could buy trash cans
True.
in bulk, as part of a bulk purchase with tight fitting lids.
Yeah, that's
Because it's
true.
very, many of our cans are so dented that the lid's don't secure.
Yeah, and actually, whether we have a contractor or not, I think, like you said, the next bid, we could think about that because, because we already provide the recycling containers.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay, so next we get to this Radnor ordinance in the packet. And this is, we have a note from the solicitor that we could adopt a resolution. So I don't know, Cindy, do you want to say anything to this? Or?
I think it's incredibly important that
Yeah.
we, as an elected body, stand in opposition to this and do everything we can within our legal power. So, yeah, I absolutely support this, and thank Ryder for taking the lead on it.
Okay, so among the committee, do we have agreement that we could recommend?
Something the council should look at.
Yeah, the council could go to the council.
Sure. Yep.
Okay.
So what I'll do is I'll ask the solicitor to draft that resolution, and as soon as it's ready, I'll ask them to shoot for the August 18th meeting, but definitely no later than the September business meeting. As soon as that resolution's ready, it'll get presented to Borough Council.
Okay, thank you. All right, so now we're on to the fire company. We have 2 items. We want to talk about the upcoming meetings to make sure we have somebody attending, and the open burning regulations. So let's see. When is your next meeting? So,
I don't know the date, it's either Monday after Labor Day.
okay.
I don't have my,
So that would be September 12th.
Okay, and that's 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
Anyone able from the committee able to go? Yeah, we're teaching.
At 8, you said 8?
8 o'clock.
Yeah.
8:10.
Yeah, I'm free now, so I'll put it on my
So you're
calendar.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. Yeah, and we can just take turns. you know, the goal, we just want to have open communication with the fire company, and we've said, you know, as you know, we've said that we want to support the anniversary. So if there's anything we can do, you know, just let us know.
We appreciate that.
Yeah.
There are a couple items about that. In the fire code, I am working on a draft to get to the borough manager for the updated, for the open borough.
Oh, great, thank you.
Oh, okay.
I'm working on it. The sense that we did not want a total borough edition at the last meeting, so I'm stepping it back a little bit. See if I can find something that works for our residents and for the safety of the rest of them. But the other couple other things, a couple small expenditures, I think that Ken talk to the borough manager about, and wants to talk to the borough manager about fuel pump out front is basically the last repair we had. It being come together basically with all the government mandates. So when it was installed, it's part of a borrow system. The fire company purchases the fuel and then sells it at cost back to the borough, and other fire companies come in and purchase it to keep the fuel fresh. There are two pumps, there's one in the front and one in the back. One is it's a fail safe. If one fails, like the this fails, we have to go back to the back and get fuel. If that one fails, the borough comes up front and gets here. So it's kind of a fail safe so that we're not floundering, we only have one pump that goes down. Apparently the codes have changed since it was installed in the mid-90s and now. And the cost to replace the pump is $23,000. Wow. Because they have to do some refiguring, they can't get clearances that have to be taken into account. And I think that we could do a formal proposal, but I wanted to bring it up here first to see if the borough would be willing to be contributing to that replacement, since it is part of a borough system. I mean, obviously we use that front pump probably more than anybody, but just wanted to bring it up to get it in your mind to see if we make a proposal, would a discussion, would it be worth it?
So Rodney, talking to Kim Watson, I have a couple of thoughts on that. Number one is, as Bill mentioned, our Public Works Department does make use of that fuel pump, and I chatted with Jeff Ellen about that. And unfortunately, as we've talked about with Public Works, while we are trying to move in a more electric direction with our tools, with the electric gator they're getting to replace the fuel-powered truck, unfortunately, we still are going to need fuel-powered Public Works vehicles in the near term. So we need, unfortunately, gasoline for that. And then, so I think the other thing I'd point out, and I welcome, Ken, is one of the main drivers of the truck. I had to ask him, like, okay, if that one out front isn't working and you have to go to the one in the back, like, I couldn't imagine trying to I give Ken a lot of credit for being able to maneuver a fire truck, or anyone who's a driver, being able to maneuver a fire truck through the back of our parking lot to get to the fuel pump back there. So if it was the one in the back, I might be a little bit more skeptical about, but I would say if we're going to have one that is replaced, and as Bill mentioned, a fail-safe as well, then I think that the one in the front, I think, is kind of the priority one between the fire department's needs in terms of maneuvering trucks and having a fail-safe for the Public Works Department as long as we have gas-powered vehicles. Like I said, I welcome whatever the fire department thinks. Jeff Eldon and I did agree that we would support, the borough making some sort of financial contribution towards that. So as Bill said, I welcome whatever thoughts this committee has about that.
Yeah, I really think it's important that we have independence and we have our own fuel supply, and so I do, sure, we should contribute. But I also wonder, like, for how many years have we been providing fuel at cost to the other departments, and are they also going to make at least some maybe modest contributions since we're providing fuel to them, or can we build in the future, like some something into the fossil fuel so that the next time we have to replace it, we have like a fund so that we can just replace it, you know. So I'm just wondering, like, you know, like which other departments use, depending on us for
It's
fuel.
really just two. The rest of them go down to
Bryn Mawr and,
Kenwood.
Bryn Mawr and Kenwood.
The rest go down to the public works complex, and the Waterbury public works.
Do they like depend on us for their fuel, or?
No, they could go down, and they could probably
They could go down there too. I mean, I don't know what makes sense, but maybe, you know, maybe if they depend on us for their fuel, maybe they should also consider contributing something, because they've been getting a lot, you know, fuel
We
from us.
just felt it was better for us, because the fuel doesn't sit and stagnate, and we.
Oh, I see the advantage. Yeah, definitely. And I also, I think it's important that we're independent that way too, that we have our own.
I'm sorry, who pays for this? Are we paying for?
The fire company pays for the fuel, and then they bill.
Oh, and then you bill it, okay.
Yeah.
It's the borough's system, the
Yeah.
tank and pump.
Got it. But you're charging them for the fuel.
We charge.
Got it.
We get reimbursed for whatever they.
One, you know, just one thought, given our kind of internal accounting for carbon,
Yeah.
I know that we kind of apply that when we make vehicle purchases. I just wonder if that could be applied to the fuel.
Yeah, let me ask, I mean, since you guys bill for it, Bill, would you be able to tell me like a kind of a round number of like, and maybe you could go find this out and let us know, like a round number of like how many gallons of fuel per year? Or maybe even just like,
Off the top of my head, I'd be shooting from the hip.
yeah, no, that's fine. So maybe like, maybe when you do the proposal for us, if you could tell us like last year, for example, you know, about how many gallons of fuel were used from that pump. And then, yeah, we can look at, you know, the carbon, you know, we know the number for how much carbon a gallon of gas generates, and we could calculate that carbon impact number, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so yeah, so I think the answer is yeah, we would be open to a contribution.
Yeah, so Bill, if you could, like I said, if you could just please come back to us with a specific number that you would like come through, and the amount of gas, the number of gallons of gas that was
Just
spent
to be
on.
clear, it's easy. It's easy.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Bill.
You would. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we'll come back to the open burning next time, maybe. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
hope to have some time next week. I'd love to get a chance to work on that meeting. I will get it through our manager too.
Okay, great.
Just for the sake of like the meeting minutes, yeah, I want to move that we add item 5.3, fuel pump, to
Okay.
the agenda.
Oh, good. Okay, let's do that.
That's a good point.
Okay. 5.3.
Yeah.
Okay, so number 6 here is the police advisory committee. So maybe we could start with the manager, and then if there are any comments.
Sure. So, as requested by the committee, advertising went out to the community about applications to the police advisory committee. I believe so far we've received 5 applications. You know, as we could have council review an appointment as soon as you all want. So I would say, you know, August 18th, if we want to go ahead and start appointing people, I think we're probably in a position to do so. And I think it's been, without getting into any of the specific candidates, I think it's been a really good and interesting background of people with law enforcement experience, people who have, you know, just community experience, people who have tangential relations, you know, with the justice system. And I think, you know, we'll see what council thinks, but I think it's a very encouraging and interesting group of people who have applied.
Okay, good. So let's see. I guess we can make appointments at the next meeting.
Well, yeah, because the deadline is the 11th, so
Yeah.
there's actually still time. I think it's incredible that in the summer, we've had 5 votes already from the board, and I think that just goes to show how much the community wants to engage in the police. And these advisory commissions are not new, we did not invent this. As people know, council is the first during the police fall under the purview and discretion of the mayor. And this really allows us a meaningful way to bring council, community, and police together for conversation in ways that we do in lots of other management, whether it's the BAC or the business association. This was planned before the chief's departure, and I think we're trying to be more perfect. We have a great group of volunteers thus far. I suspect we'll get some more. Different conversations I've had that people really are willing and interested in being engaged in these conversations. So I'm excited about that.
Okay, so, any comments, maybe?
Yeah, I never worked with, obviously, a police advisory committee. So what exactly is it that they're running? I've never heard of one, I've never worked with one. Obviously, I've worked here my entire career, 4 years in Montgomery County, so during the time period here that I've worked, it's usually been public safety committee, and things just trickle down on us, and that's how we find it down. So I'm guessing it's going to be something along the lines where you have citizens involved, and then what?
Right, so, yeah, I mean, the basic idea is that we would have this committee offer some suggestions to us on very specific questions. For example, there was a question that came to this committee on whether we should buy body cameras. And as a committee, we didn't feel we knew the answer. We control the purse strings. We had seen kind of conflicting evidence about is it good, is it not good. We didn't know if it was really necessary for our community. And so that would be the kind of question that we would put to the police advisory committee. They could research it for a couple months and come back with a recommendation. Say, there might be some cons, but overall we support it. And that would just give us, the confidence to say this is in the best interest of the community. And we don't always feel, I guess, equipped to do that because we're not expert in this area. Yeah.
And I think it's important that we as a public health and safety committee have to give a charge to the police advisory committee, right? So there has to be this is the directive. I personally, one of the first recommendations I'm going to bring to you both is one that I've asked for a long time, like what is the updated mission statement of public health and safety and police in our community? Because from that is how I personally look at how we spend the budget, right? So for example, we look at our comprehensive plan to say, okay, this was the mission statement, a very involved mission statement, value statement of our borough. And then that helps us decide, okay, that's how we invest our taxpayers' money. I think that the police should have that. I think that's the starting point. This is who we are as a department. This is how we define public health and safety. And then from there, we look at, okay, what do we need to do to support that mission statement? I think policing is not stagnant, right? I think it's an ever-changing, it's a fast-moving now, incredibly important social structure, and it behooves us to constantly be reevaluating and co-creating with that community. So I would start probably pretty broad and look at what are the charges then, and have that advisory committee empowered to say, we want the police. So we're going to do the research on who would buy them. We're going to do the research on the body cameras, and I would expect that they would talk to police and say, we want to know what it looks like from your perspective, right? In a way that perhaps doesn't put council in an awkward position of asking me questions about your performance, but there's the research and the evidence, and then there's the anecdotal experience of what that looks like in Harvard, and collectively that will inform, I think, us as a community.
That was really well said, because I think there's, as a council person, there's always like a lot of reticence or hesitation to go and say, look, I just won't go and talk to officers to sort of get information because it just seems like inappropriate. And because of the because of the position that we're in as decision makers. So this is like sort of an arm's length to allow residents to be able to do that, give ideas and information. I'm perfectly willing if officers want to come and talk to me, but not the other way around. And I,
Yeah, and we're even kind of counseled, not, if you look at the Pisby and the borough management, it actually kind of says like council needs to stay in its lane. So
yeah, it's about that.
It's an
It's about
awkward-
staying in our role.
Right. I mean,
Same with
right,
borough staff, like I would never go and discuss, I would never go and ask something of a borough staff member directly, I would ask the manager, that's the appropriate line of communication.
Right.
I think, whereas a committee like Parks and Rec can actually, meet with the manager and the staff and have a more full discussion and then make recommendations. It's more organized. Also, there's so much to know. And we are divided in 18 different directions. And when it came to the issue of body cameras, for example, it's a really important discussion, and I think it's important to have a recommendation from the right, people. So,
Yeah, I guess I would say two things. Number one, I guess I'll admit this concern about dialoguing with the officers is maybe something I didn't realize existed before. I would encourage, I think in my vision of a chief position, that's kind of part of that person's role with all, while respecting the mayor's role as well in the department. The other thing I would say, for me, I see the way I always kind of understood the biggest benefit of this committee is if you look at our agenda here today, we have a variety of topics to talk about and a variety of committees that already kind of report up to this committee. And not just expertise, because there is some expertise on this committee, but in terms of time commitment, I just don't think this committee has had adequate time to give these issues that are important to the police the time they deserve. Whereas the separate committee, that's all they would be doing is discussing these issues that are important to you all and important to council. The same way we're doing in a minute, the Shade Tree Commission, the Environmental Advisory Committee, the same way we just kind of did with, in a slightly different way with the fire company. So that's kind of my vision on this. It's something that'll give us more bandwidth to address really important issues.
So, how I take this is they would make recommendations, and then the recommendations come to you guys would contemplate, think about it, go from there. But, I mean, my question is, would it affect policies, would it affect obviously that falls in the chief's realm there, so I guess, that would be his or her area, whoever the chief is, to change the policy in accordance with what you guys did, right?
Correct.
So it's going to be like a recommendation, if you guys agree with it, yeah, we're going to go with that, but if you don't, you don't.
Well, yeah, and then ultimately it's the mayor and the chief's purview. We can only say we support this and recommend it, aside from budgetary issues.
Okay.
So it would have to be the mayor and chief to say, well, the PAC recommended it, PHC approved it and recommended it, but we're not going to, whatever. I mean, at the end of the day, again, we don't. Can I make one more? This is now becoming a stream of consciousness, because I do think that perhaps this is something that the PAC can help us with. So for example, when we're talking about the traffic studies, and I was talking about speed, I looked directly at you two, and I think that this is a missing piece, and I'll give an example. Price and Conway is a terrible intersection. Neighbors have complained for years. We put the data out, the engineer does the data, we get the evidence that people don't really speak. I can tell you, I've talked to 2 officers, actually just kind of sitting chatting on the corner, and the officer said, this is a nightmare. There's always skidding, and it's kind of like the missing piece, right? Where we've said we don't want to rely completely on anecdotal and narrative. We have to make educated, evidence-based decisions. But I wonder if part of that PAC can start to think about how do we meaningfully include police perspective into some of these things, even like traffic. That's not a mayor or chief decision per se, but it's establishing communication lines.
So what I can tell you about that intersection, and you probably say the same thing,
Yeah.
just to go with that.
Yeah.
I mean, something like that, I can tell you what the problem is there. People think sometimes there's a stop sign there coming this way, and people that are trying to cross over Conway, they think that they have a stop. It's just, I know what you're saying with the missing link, but yeah, I mean, I can tell you what's going on in Dudley and North Essex. People aren't speeding up there. They're rolling through the stop sign. And then they come down Essex, they get to the stop sign, and then just roll through. I mean, trust me, that's the main complaint I get from the residents up there. And then it seems like they're speeding down Dudley Avenue or North Essex Avenue. But yeah, that's what I mean. Like, it's-
Yeah, that's exactly the perspective, yeah.
Yeah, like how do we formalize a communication line? Where we say, okay, we're gonna get the engineer data, but we're also gonna ask police for, hey, what do you observe here? What are your thoughts? Boots on the ground, what is your thoughts? And then collectively, we have like a holistic set of data to use.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, to me, like having Officer Bernaccio and Officer Dutton like in the room right now, like listening to us talk, this is incredibly valuable to us because I think like so many times like the officers don't have any idea like what we're thinking, or you get it like through the rumor mill, and then you like might make up the worst stories, might make up good stories, might make up bad stories about what the council's thinking, and it's like, and it goes both ways, and it's like, it's really not good for our community relationships, and I think this is like an opportunity to have, like Cindy's saying, just much better communication, so, yeah,
I just
Carson's not making stuff up, and we're not making stuff up about you guys.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo that as well, and thank Sergeant Bernaccio and Officer Dutton for being here.
Really appreciate it.
And,
No problem.
I'm sorry, one last comment. This is my take. It was brought to our attention that an officer was assaulted some time ago, and council did not know. And I can tell you, we were distraught that we did not know, because we would have reached out to stop. I'll stop.
I don't know if that's accurate.
I did not know the details, or it's significant. And we are a small community, Chris, better officers, and I'm just saying that if there were no communication, I would speak for myself, and I would want to personally follow up, as you are a member of our community. And I'm hoping that we're able to establish this good communication.
Right, and I get it. Like, you guys want to know what's going on, just like we want to know what's going on.
Yeah,
Right.
We never really truly have communicated, fluidly.
Right.
I've never seen a fluid communication between everybody, but I understand what you're saying, and I can understand you being upset if you didn't know anything about it. That's like a major incident.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure council was notified about that.
Okay.
We were not notified about the crash.
I have the email, I'll report it to you.
I would love that.
So we really would like to have open lines, just like with the fire company, we really would like to have open communication. So we appreciate you coming, and we'll certainly keep you apprised. I think the first meeting of the committee would probably be in September at the earliest.
Yeah.
So we'll be sure to give you the information.
Come and do it.
Maybe you could, maybe a member of the department could come to the first meeting, and meet people,
Yeah, we can do something like that. Like I said, officer, if it's not me, it's what I mean.
It's just nice to see what you guys are prioritizing and how things that you guys are working on impact us. And maybe it's something on patrol that we're not necessarily overlooking, but we're not necessarily, it hasn't been brought to our attention yet. That was one of the reasons why I kind of came up here today, just to kind of see a different perspective of what's going on in the borough, different than what I'm seeing.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. It's beneficial, for all of us. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, well, I know we're almost out of time. I'm not sure how we should do this.
There is one topic that I think is very time sensitive, or somewhat time sensitive. We are open to, the EV charger pilot is something I would very strongly like to talk about. I don't know how the committee feels about tabling everything else.
Yeah, we could, I think that would be okay. We could table the shade tree.
And
if maybe at the last item, I'd like to at least just mention, if it's okay with you, the CCA idea.
Yeah.
Okay, I'd just like to mention that so that we have it on our radar.
Yeah, is that time sensitive though?
I think we have a month or so we could all look at it to understand it better. But if you want to start, go ahead.
All right, so we've talked for a while now on this committee about, almost ever since the chargers we have were installed, about the opportunity to provide residential chargers In December of last year, we actually had a resident approach the borough looking for a building permit to install an EV charger on the curb in front of their property because they didn't have a driveway. We talked about that in this committee. The borough ultimately approved a permit for that, just with the caveats that property owner that like this isn't your personal parking spot. So I think it demonstrates a need for this in the community, and I think if we are going to get more people using EVs, we have to think about people who on their own can't buy and install EVs because they don't have a driveway, they live in an apartment, what have you. So to that end, I was talking with Pico, our electrician, the company we got the chargers from, and I think we have a really exciting opportunity here to install these chargers designed specifically for curbside use. We talked a lot about them before. So here today I have for you all an actual specific list of properties where they could potentially go and an actual cost breakdown from our electrician and Flow, the EV provider, about what they would cost us. This is not take it or leave it. It is a list where if we say maybe this location is problematic or doesn't make sense, you know, if we take one or two off, like that's not going to fundamentally change anything here. In addition, we are proposing putting an additional EV in the parking lot here, given the amount of usage the current one is getting, that when the borough does start having its own EVs, which we're hoping the parking controller vehicle, you know, will be an EV at a minimum, that we'll actually have somewhere to charge our own stuff without deterring residents from using it. So that's the proposal. In terms of paying for it, I think, you know, we'd want a similar strategy to what we did with the original ones, where we would determine what our final kind of cost is based on how many we want to do. We would then, you know, consider some kind of outreach to the Narberth Industrial Development Authority for a contribution, given that this is also being grant funded. And then the remainder, thankfully with the other two, we didn't really have to put any borough money into it per se. But I think for these, we are going to have to consider some level of borough contribution as well. So there we go. I welcome your thoughts on the locations, how many we should do, and then what level of borough contribution we're comfortable with versus what level we want to request from NIDA.
I mean, it's good. To me, it's like throwing spaghetti at the wall. Like I think, you know, it's a good idea, and you know, the locations that's going to really be like who's going to complain the loudest. If it's a problem, that's kind of what's going to happen. I don't know if there's any way to avoid that. It's also just to note that Acme just installed 4 like high-speed chargers. So like while you're buying your groceries, you know, in 30 to 40 minutes you can charge your car 90%. You know, and so like that's coming also. But I think the convenience for residents to have the chargers near, like in the neighborhoods, near their homes, I think it's a great thing, and we should be doing it.
Yeah,
there's some about the locations, like I kind of deferred it to the.
Yeah, there's
to you.
There's one location or 1.5 locations in particular I wanted to bring to your attention, especially in light of the Acme charger installation. The one proposed for up near Iona, up near, oh my goodness, I'm getting across street now. But anyway, that one's relatively close to where Acme is. Also, that's a pretty heavily parked area. Part of my thought process on that one, the parking committee has been talking about providing residents with access to certain private lots and negotiating agreements for that. I have noticed a lot at the business near where that would be. I believe it's the Insignium is the most noticeable business there. Seems pretty consistently unused. So part of the thought was, okay, yeah, you put a charger in there, you're giving up a couple parking spots, but potentially you open up the Insignium lot for people to be able to park out, which would offset that. So I guess the caveat on that charger, I would say, is I would only want to put that one in if we have an agreement in place for residents to be able to park in the Insignium lot. On the other one, there's one on Elmwood by the train station. And talking with Flo and our electrician, if we actually wanted to move that one around the corner to, Essex and, on Essex near Elmwood and the train station, we could accommodate that, and that might have less of an impact on street parking.
Yeah, I would support that change.
Yeah, so it's like actually then someone commuting could use it.
Right. And, like Bob's saying, the ones that are close to where people live, people can charge overnight, so it doesn't so much matter if it's 30 minutes or 4 hours to charge. But the one in the lot, I don't know, you may want to just have a conversation with Flo. If they have a faster charger, I could imagine the one in the lot would be the location for that. Oh, that would be great. If we could
Yeah, that's a really
if we
good
could
point,
get some
actually.
high-speed chargers, that would be fantastic. At the playground, you could go over, play with your kid, charge your car, or play basketball, charge your car.
Well, and especially too, if the borough is ultimately going to be using it as well.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And that may alleviate, that may kind of ease the way for, we had talked about electrics for the police department at one point, and charging was one of the concerns.
In terms of the costs, I mean, is there a certain comfort level or threshold that you all would want for a borough contribution versus, asking NIDA for money? Again, these costs are subject to change with some of the stuff we're talking about, but
I kind of trust your judgment. I know there's significant grant money that we'll pursue first. And
I think that we should get as much as we can
Yes.
from the grants and from NIDA. And then, because I have a feeling when we look back on this whole thing, like in 20 years, it's such a, the transition to electric is sort of it's the Wild West. And we don't know whether or not this is good investment. We know that we need it, but we don't know if it's like a good long-term investment or not. We just don't. Time will tell. So, yeah, I think it's better if we can use funds that are available to us rather than spending money directly out of the borough budget.
so I'll also reach out to the chair of NIDA, and we'll get his, thoughts on what level of contribution he thinks would be appropriate for NIDA as well. And then I'll get this information from Flo about the potential for a fast charger. Would you want me to come back to this committee again, or would you, with that information, or do you want it to move up to borough council yet?
I think we can move to council. Yeah, I think we can move ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I know it's a lot of coordination and it required convincing PICO to run this as a pilot program. So there's a lot of work that you've done to.
And I give PICO a lot of credit. They're at a point where they're very excited about this opportunity. I think it's something that if we make happen, they're going to want to promote, and ditto with Flo. And I just think it's a really great opportunity. So thank you for your support.
Yeah, I wanted to add to just like, we really appreciate you focusing on it.
Yeah. So I know we're over time, but maybe I could just take 1 minute to mention this new recommendation that just came to the committee a few days ago from the EAC. And this is to join with other boroughs.
Sorry, just logistic note, can we add this as item 8.3 to the
Yes,
agenda?
thank you. 8.3 CCA. So it's called Community Choice Aggregation. And this is part of the code for the state allows boroughs only, not townships or cities, only boroughs have this right to procure their own electricity for all of the residents through kind of bulk buying. And so the Ready for 100 coalition in Pennsylvania that we've been part of has, they organized just a few weeks ago an informational meeting that was recorded and shared with the committee. So it's something we could review and maybe talk about next time. But the basic idea is to join with the other boroughs, including Westchester and Swarthmore and Media, to buy renewable electricity in bulk to lock in a lower rate than the default rate that we're paying to PECO now. So it would be renewable, it would be cheaper. Residents would have an option, they could opt out if they didn't want to be part of this. But it would become the new norm for the borough, and it seems to be the clear path forward toward meeting our renewable goals for 2030.
Just a question, this is basically like giving residents another electrical choice, right? It's not, is that basically it? Right? It's like, this is just another choice.
Well, you have to opt out, which is what I actually.
Well, you would opt out,
Excited.
so you're, yeah, but I mean, but it's essentially, it's not, you still have choice.
Right,
You guys still have choice.
That's right.
No, you don't have to respond affirmatively, it's gonna be purchased in bulk for the borough and you would opt out, but if you opt out, you could still buy it from whoever.
That's right.
So if you wanted more expensive, less clean, you could opt out.
Yeah, if you, right, or, but I mean, your PECO's not your only opt-out option, you could still go with one of the other million
Right.
electrical providers. I'm just saying, we're not, this seems like a no-brainer to me.
It does to me
Yeah.
too. Yeah, it's a
As long
remarkable.
as it's not too complicated for the manager.
Well, what part of what
I don't mean too complicated for you to handle, I just mean like
too time consuming.
like add something else that you don't have time to do.
Well, there's a, you know, we can all maybe learn more about it over the next month, but the way that it's structured through this Ready for 100 coalition, they already have someone on board who would structure the contract and do all of the management. So I don't think that it would take time away from the manager. That's my hope. You know, it would require solicitor review.
I don't know. I mean, I appreciate that thought. I'm kind of, I'll admit I'm a little skeptical that would be the case, because we say that about a lot of things, and it doesn't seem to play out that way. So I'll say this, and why don't we just refer to it as maybe minimal manager involvement? And I think it's such a good idea. I mean, I've been already like, I don't mean to use too strong words, but like agonizing with the members of EAC about how do we get more people to be in renewable.
Yeah.
And honestly, this program would be so much easier than the other ideas that me and the EAC have been trying to work on.
Yes,
So trust me, this alternative is far preferable
yes,
to all the other sort of plans me and the EAC have been trying to figure out.
yeah, great. That's perfect. You know, and the other benefit of this is that it creates this kind of bulk demand for renewable electric supply. So that then builds the market so that, you know, solar and wind have that assurance that they should develop the production, you know. So it's an exciting opportunity.
Great.
Yeah. So maybe we can return to it at our next meeting.
Rob, thank you for
Oh my God.
working with EAC so closely and coordinating that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the EAC found it and probably put there in this coalition.
But this is exactly what we need to do.
Why we have
This is the research.
Right.
Yeah.
It's sort of like analogous to why we want a PAC.
Exactly.
That's what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think that's all we have time for today.
Can I just
Yeah.
speak to one thing on the agenda, or you consider it next time? So we really kind of laid off the plastic bag enforcement through the pandemic, recognizing businesses have enough on their plate. There was a complaint maybe put off so that there's a business that just kind of tacks on the charge and hands it out. I just wonder at this point in the plastic regulation world and climate, places just ban them. I mean, if we just go back to New Jersey, there's just no plastic bags. I wonder at this point if they just say, we're banning plastic bags, we don't have to deal with the charge. You know, maybe the EAC makes a recommendation, some places are doing styrofoam. Should we reevaluate the plastic ordinance perhaps?
Yeah.
Well, I think, I'm not the expert on this. I think the reason why the borough did the fee was that I'm not sure if we legally can do an actual fee.
Right, in Jersey, they can, I think,
Yeah.
we can.
And I agree, I like the idea, because I'll admit doing the enforcement on the fee thing is like, it's very convoluted.
It's just.
And so thank you for your understanding of that. I mean, if we could legally do it, I'm willing to, I won't object to that by any means, but.
Yeah, well, we could ask the EAC to look into
Yeah,
this. you know, to see if it could be updated in some way. Okay. All right, well, thank you, everybody. We will meet next in September.